And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of King versus Ward. Step forward, please.
Supermarket cashier Kathy King is suing her ex-boyfriend, carpenter Ron Ward, for medical bills and lost wages due to his continual abuse.
According to what I read, you and the defendant had a long relationship, and you don't have any children together, but you had children that lived in the home with you.
Yes, correct.
While, according to you, this domestic violence situation was going on for a long time.
Yes, it has been.
And what you're suing Mr. Ward for is for a series of assaults, in one of which you say you were seriously injured.
Yes, I was.
Okay. Mr. Ward says that he neither drinks, which you allege, or has ever put his hands on you. Is that right, sir?
I've never, ever hit her.
You say the first incident that you're complaining of occurred in January. You want to tell me what happened?
Yes. Basically, there was a series of incidents with Mr. Ward's drinking, from the Long Beach Grand Prix where he was punching out people to his 17-year-old son trying to commit suicide. We also had his...
Could we stop with the drama? And what I want you to tell me is what happened with you in January. What assault you are complaining of?
Basically,
in January?
he had been drinking New Year's Eve, and we found him in the garage drinking a bottle of wine. We proceeded to bring him in. He went to bed.
And is that something that you are suing him for?
No, it's the injuries that I've heard from...
Well, tell me about it.
Okay, basically, he came in from the house. His son tried to put him to bed. He had roughed me house. I have went to the doctors. I have the doctor reports.
Okay, let me see it.
Salt staples.
Says you went to the doctor on January 11th.
January 11th.
Just a second. 10 days after this alleged roughing up.
Basically, yes, I did. I wasn't sore till then.
Okay, next. Let me have next.
And then from there on...
Just a second. You didn't throw him out of the house?
Not at that time, no.
And you didn't leave?
No, I did not.
What's next?
Then on February 14th, he came home. He was upset about things that were happening at work. He started drinking. From there, he turned around and took a vase, threw it at me, hit me in the head. I then called the police that night. They came out. The officer was a new officer named... He said he wasn't going to proceed to go wake up Mr. Ward, but he'd be back the next day. He's seen the damage. I have pictures of the...
Okay, let me see the police report from February 14th, please.
Would you like the picture, too? It's the vase. When it hit my head, it hit the noyum and caused a tear in the noyum.
No, I just want to see.
Okay.
You don't have a picture of your head, do you?
No. There was a bump.
That is what I would have taken a picture of, not anything else.
I did ask to go to the doctors, Your Honor, from the cops that night, and they did not take me.
You're a big girl. If you were injured, then you go to the doctor. If you made the first step and called the police, you make the second step if you're injured and go to the doctor. Now, what happened after February 14th?
I told him that he couldn't come home.
Good.
He didn't come home for a while. Then I let him back in. He promised me that he would get himself out of debt. He was...
Okay, just a second. So you let him back in. When did you let him back in?
I let him back in probably 2 days later. He stayed in a hotel for 2 days.
So a couple of days later, he came home.
And he said that he would go and he would get help as far as treatment.
Good.
But he failed to take AA. He went into a study for relationships.
Ms. King, when did he go into treatment?
April.
Right, so you took him back immediately. So you lived with him in January, when you got roughed up, according to you. February, when he threw a vase at you. March, and he went into treatment in April. But you lived with him all this time.
Unfortunately, yes, I had...
Ms. King, I'm asking you questions.
Yes.
I understand the drill when you claim that you've been battered, but sometimes it's difficult to extricate yourself. I understand all that. And you finally did, according to your complaint.
I did.
Good. So why are you here?
Because of the abuse, they have jeopardized my job. He told me that if I went and took him to court, he would make my child motherless.
What was he talking about if you took him to court? What court?
We went to small claims.
For what?
For damage of the house. I was being sued from the landlord that is in this courtroom. He's only suing me because they happen to be drinking buddies and friends.
Just a minute. So you've been to small claims court with regard to other things?
Correct, I have.
With regard to landlord and tenant dispute?
And
Is
abuse.
That so far?
Yes.
And is there a judgment against you from landlord and tenant court?
It was a total of $4,000.
Okay. Now, what was the next case that you had?
I have terminated my daycare provider that is also in the courtroom. After Ron had vacated
That's this lady over here.
Yes.
And?
She needed a place to live. Her and her husband entered my home and agreed to pay me half of the rent and half of the bills to help out.
What did she sue you for?
A rental car, $2,600.
You owed her for a rental car because you rented a rental car on her credit card?
Correct. She won $642 and I won $26.88. Then she filed an appeal, and then right now I'm still fighting it because I don't think the judge knew that I had a case.
What was the ultimate decision?
She got $642.
What's next?
Basically, after February 14th in April, he completed the class. He was instructed to go through the psychiatry program through AA. He didn't want to go back. I told him, we're done.
So that's fine. That's in May. You told him you're done.
So then basically, he vacated the premises. He's left me with tons of bills. I'm being sued by the landlord, which
That's not part of his complaint. So he left in May.
He left in May.
So what are you doing here?
Real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Kathy King says she endured physical beatings at the hand of her ex-boyfriend, Ron Ward. Ron claims he's never laid a finger on her.
So what are you doing here? May, June, July, August, September,
I've been
October,
abused.
December.
He jeopardized my home.
Are you talking about prior to May?
Because of the injuries, I wasn't able to go to work. And because of that, in the Retail Clerks Union, you have to submit amount of hours in the grocery store to receive insurance.
Ms. King, let me explain something to you. This is not windfall day. If you wanted to sue somebody because they assaulted you and injured you, you sue them in January, you sue them in February, not a year and a half later. That's number one. It appears to me as if there has been an ongoing abuse of the judicial system and a lot of time wasted on this relationship that is now terminated. I certainly have absolutely no intention to becoming a party to this, what we call in French, mishigas, or craziness. Pay careful attention. You claim to be a battered almost spouse. You had a 4-year relationship. You had no children together. There was no reason for you to stay together. If you were involved with you don't have to say a word. If you were involved with a man who drinks, and you brought him into your home, and you have a child, that doesn't make you a very good parent. There was nothing tying you to this man. If he was a drinker, leave.
I loved him.
No, you left him.
The first 2 years.
Listen to me. If you left him, then we wouldn't be here. Then we wouldn't be here. Your problem now is you now have judgments against you for a substantial amount of money, and you're hoping to even the score. That is not going to happen. In January, when you claim he roughed you up, you chose to go to the doctor 11 days after this alleged struggle. You again allege that you were injured February 14th when he, you say in your complaint, smashed a vase over your head.
He did.
Now, when you testified, you said he threw a vase at you and it hit you in the head. That's different. However, you chose to take a photograph of a wall rather than your head. I don't understand that.
But I did.
To me, just listen to me. If I wanted to make a case, I would take a picture of my injury. I would not take a picture of a wall. Now, you may not take a picture of anything. That I could understand. But to take a picture of a wall rather than your head, that I don't understand. Now is not the time to exacerbate what you allege was an abusive situation that terminated a year ago.
I went into 6 months of counseling to get myself recovered from it.
That's wonderful. So what are you doing here? You want to, you say that
pain and
this man-
suffering. He has caused me a lot of, I have been in
Madam,
court
you're a
system.
big girl. You're a big girl. You got yourself well. You claim he's an abuser.
He is.
You can't claim he's an abuser. Then if you're well and well rid of him, what are you doing here but for the fact that you're being sued by a lot of other people and at least 3 different judges found that you were mistaken?
No, the judge that gave me and Ron a wash said he awarded Ron $5,000 and me $5,000 and told me to take Ron to civil court and go for the whole thing because
Just a second, what judge awarded you $5,000 for what?
For the abuse, the damage to the property that I'm being sued for.
Just a second, you sued it. Just a second,
He
Miss
needs
King.
to be a man and stand up for his
Pay attention to
responsibility.
me. Are you telling me that you sued him before another judge at another time for abuse?
No, I sued him for loss of wages and damages, and he felt that I needed to take it.
Shh. Loss of wages due to what?
Abuse.
Goodbye. You had your bite of the apple. This is over.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
He's an abuser, and I should have just did what she said, get out of it.
They were all lies. It's just to cover her guilt.
Thank God he's gone.
I think if anybody needs treatment, she does.
I will seek restitution.
America, if you see her coming, run.
He needs to stand up and take responsibility of the damage he did to the residents.
She's just loving the court system, thinks she can win, and I hope today she's learned that she can't.
And now the next case.
All parties in the matter of Bullock versus Haycox. Step forward, please.
Nurse Karen Bullock is suing her ex-boyfriend, Ralph Haycox, for having her falsely arrested and for the return of her belongings. Ralph says during an argument, Karen hit him with a Big Mac.
Miss Bullock, how long were you and the defendant in a relationship?
Ralph and I were in a relationship for 9 years.
According to your complaint, the defendant had you falsely arrested on domestic violence charges, and you were forced to spend some 30 days in jail. You want to be compensated for that. And in addition, you say that when he unceremoniously told you to get your stuff and get out, he kept some of your personal property, and you want it back, or the value of that property. That's what your lawsuit is about, correct?
Yes.
Mr. Haycox, is that your name?
Yes.
Says that you got arrested because you deserve to get arrested. You spent time in jail because you deserve to spend time in jail. And that he has none of your property. Is that right, sir?
Yes.
When was this incident that caused you to be arrested?
It was in March of this year. I served 30 days in jail.
Well, tell me about it. What happened?
Ralph and, like I said, Ralph and I have been together for 9 years. I walked in and caught him in the bed with another woman.
Look at me, please. Don't
The
look
cops
down.
was called, and I was arrested. I was told it was a violation of a restraining order. And I appeared in front of the judge.
Just a second. When you came home, something must have happened if the police were called.
Actually, nothing. I told him, I said, oh, I done caught you in a lie. You told me it was over between him and his woman. Actually, him and I had problems.
Just a second. He called the police. You want to tell me, sir, what happened when she caught you?
I was home alone. There was no one there with me, and she came in with an attitude about
That's
something.
Not true.
And
That's not true.
we started having a debate, and the next thing I know, she had a Big Mac, and she took and slammed it in my face.
A Big Mac
Hamburger.
sandwich?
Yes.
That's not true.
Okay.
And instead of going off and hitting her, I called the police, and she left and went to one of my neighbor's house to try to hide, but they put a warrant out for her, and about a week later they came to the house and picked her up.
Has there been incidents of violence between the two of you before?
Yes.
Tell me when.
Oh, the relationship was just full of violence and nonsense. We'd broken up maybe a half a dozen times before, and it's just time to stay away from each other. That's what I wanted her to do.
Okay. Now, what I read in the complaint was, Miss Bullock, it appears to me that there was a restraining order that was in existence at the time Mr. Haycox called the police and had you arrested for this hamburger incident. When was that restraining order issued?
Had to be a few years ago, but I didn't know that it was still in effect. To my knowledge,
But it was still in effect.
Evidently, it was.
So he had a protective order.
Right.
So you served 30 days for violating that protective order.
So that's what I found out it was.
Now, did you plead guilty to violating the protective order?
Yes, I did. Yes.
Do you have any of the criminal court papers, please?
Yes, I do.
I'd like to take a look at them. This. I think you understand. Thanks.
Oh, I have something else here, too.
Well, this was issued in February, and this protective order says that you are to refrain from doing anything to him and to refrain from entering the family dwelling.
Mm-hmm.
You pled guilty? You pled guilty to violating the restraining order?
That's what they got me on, for violating the restraining
You
order.
pled guilty and served 30 days.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
Then you can't sue him for falsely having you arrested.
Okay.
Do you understand?
Yes.
Good. Now, What personal property do you say you still have in the defendant's house?
I have receipts and stuff, documented stuff that I had.
Like what? Give me an example.
A television. I have antiques in there, lamps, dishes, blow dryer, curling iron, mirror, handmade mirror.
Go ahead, sir. Do you have any of her stuff?
Yes, some of those things are there, but I've called her and tried to make arrangements with her so she could come and pick up her property.
Okay.
And she said, well, I'm going to settle it in court and don't call here anymore.
Fine.
So,
This is what you want to do. I want you to pack up her property. Pack it up neatly. Don't damage anything because you want this lady to leave you alone. Correct? What relative do you have? You live in New Britain, Connecticut?
I have a brother.
Do you get along with her brother?
yeah.
Good. 5 days from today, your brother, in the company of a police officer, will go to the house. He will give your brother your property. Do you understand? He says he has some of your property, and he doesn't look like a nut, so that he doesn't want you to come around anymore. So whatever you have that belongs to her, or you think even marginally belongs to her, be smart. Pack up, get ready for her brother to pick up. Do you understand?
Yes.
Perfect. 5 days. That's all. Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Parties are excused. You may step out.
She'd stay out all night, stay out 2-3 days sometimes. She'd come home. I wouldn't let her in. I would let her in. And there's no way for a person to live.
I trusted him. You know, I was in love with him.
I never trusted another person like that again, I'll tell you.
I fell for what he had to tell me. It was my stupidity, so.
I don't wish any bad luck on her. I just wanted her to leave me alone.
Fireman Christopher Safford is suing his daughter's maternal grandmother, homemaker Linda Daniels, for the return of child support. Christopher claims she was overpaid.
Order. All rise. This is case number 164 on the calendar in the matter of Safford versus Daniels.
Thank you.
Parties have been sworn in, Judge. You may be seated. Ma'am, have a seat, please.
Mr. Safford, the defendant is your child's maternal grandmother.
Yes, ma'am.
And your lawsuit claims that she had had custody of this child for a while, and then you were ultimately awarded custody of your daughter?
Yes.
And you claim an overpayment of child support.
Correct.
Ms. Daniels says that while you may have had physical custody of the child during that period, she actually had legal custody by a court order. Is that right?
Yes.
And
that's
therefore
right.
she is entitled to the support. Is that your defense?
That's my defense.
Your complaint was rather sketchy, Mr. Stafford, but from what I gather, you had a relationship with the defendant's daughter. Is this your daughter?
Yes, ma'am.
And the child was born, and you claim that you were told that you were not the child's father. Is that right?
That's correct.
Who told you you were not the child's father?
The social worker at the clinic there, the hospital where she was born.
When were you advised you were not the child's father?
The date of birth, I was present.
Is your name listed on the birth certificate?
No, it isn't.
Is someone else's name listed on the birth certificate?
Yes. After I had hired a lawyer, found out that the defendant's daughter was married. She never told me.
So there is another man's name as the father of the child on the birth certificate?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor,
Yes.
he's not telling the truth. He knew my daughter was married. We're cousins. And he didn't want it.
Okay. Did you advise the plaintiff that he may not have been the father of this child?
No, he was living with her when she got pregnant.
That doesn't necessarily mean anything.
No, but he knew he was the father. My daughter told him. When he was present at birth, my daughter stated to him to sign the birth certificate.
Ma'am, that's
He
not
wouldn't
true.
put his name on it.
That's
Just a
not
minute.
true.
You weren't there.
She
No, I
wasn't
wasn't,
there.
but
You
my
weren't
daughter
there.
is here. She
You
can
weren't
tell
there.
you.
She refused to be there. She didn't want nothing to do with her daughter at the time when she
What
was giving
happened
birth.
when the baby
That's
was
not
born, sir?
true.
Because this is important.
What happened when Vendela was born was that she was placed in a foster home.
No, at the time of her birth.
Yes.
You were in the hospital when she was born.
Yes.
So at that point, you thought you were the child's father.
Yes. I was under the impression that we both were going to take a paternity test. The social worker came back and told me that Deirdre stated that I'm not the father of Vendela. And she said that the father's been named. I said, well, that's...
Don't speak because you weren't there.
My daughter
Don't
was.
speak because you weren't there. And your daughter was on drugs at the time.
No, she wasn't.
This child was born with traces of cocaine in her system?
Negative.
So why was the child placed in foster care?
Because of her past history, which I had no idea to the extent that it is.
You mean past drug history?
Yes.
And that's why the child was removed?
Correct.
You can stand up with your mother if you want to. At what point, sir, were you advised that you were the father of this child?
We took a genetic marking paternity test.
When?
In 99 of March.
When was your child born?
1/28/98.
Between January 28th of 1998 and March of 1999, had you seen this child?
No, ma'am.
Why not?
I didn't have no contact with the mother or the family after being told I wasn't the father.
And it was who that told you you were? Was it the social worker or was it the mother of the child?
The grandmother came into the picture probably 9 months later, subpoenaed me to court for paternity.
In 1998, you were told that someone else's name had been placed on the birth certificate.
Yes, ma'am.
Whose name was on the birth certificate?
It's my husband, which was separated, but he and I were engaged, and I was in the process of getting divorced.
There was no engagement. There was no ring involved. There was none of that.
Somebody else's name was placed on the birth certificate at the time the child was born.
Because I was still married, and they have to do that in the state of Massachusetts.
No, she lied.
1998, the defendant summoned you to court. Is that right?
It was fall of 98.
Took the paternity test in March of 99, and the results of that test established that you were the child's father.
Yes, ma'am.
When did you initiate custody proceedings?
It was August 4th of 99 that the adjudication was supposed to have been heard. For some reason, I have no idea, it went on for, I believe, 7 months until I was adjudicated. I have the document here that was signed by both myself, the lawyer, and the defendant, the grandmother, who was guarantee relative of Vendel at the time.
Okay, at the time, the child was ultimately taken out of foster care and placed in the care of her grandmother.
Correct.
You have other children of this daughter, don't you?
Yes, ma'am.
How many other children?
2, but I only have 1 now.
Why, is she taking one back?
No, she went to live with the father.
Did the grandmother consent to your having custody of the child?
There was a court hearing. She had no say in it because I was not mentally impaired or no drugs or anything like that.
How's your daughter doing now?
She's doing fine. I'm happy that I have her and that she's out of the environment that she's in. She's doing a lot better than she was.
Okay. When did you take physical custody of the child?
That was March 9th of 2000.
And how much child support were you paying that time?
It was $200 a week.
And when you were ultimately called to court, that was in 99, and they made a paternity order. They made a retroactive order so that you had to pay several $1,000s to the defendant.
Correct.
And you did, in fact, pay that?
Yes, that was satisfied.
How many weeks after you obtained custody of the child did the money continue to come out of your check?
Your Honor, why you look for that? Could I tell you?
Just a minute. Wait a second. I'll get to your side. Okay. I promise you.
A little over a month and a half.
So if you had custody for 7 weeks, that comes to $1,400. Okay, now it's up to you, Miss Daniels. Talk to me.
Okay. Back referring to when he said he was supposed to take custody in 1999, it was because he didn't want to have nothing to do with her. We went to court and we signed this paper, and he was supposed to take custody. He made no attempt to get a place to put her, no attempt to help pay for her living expense. He gave me nothing. And then he tell you that he don't know why. It's because he didn't want nothing to do with the baby. That's why he didn't take it in 1999. And I have this paper proving he signed it, and he's supposed to take custody of it. But he didn't because he didn't want to have nothing to do with her.
Judge Judy continues in a moment.
He pretended to be my friend and cared about me, and then we fell in love. He wanted a child. Then I had a drug relapse. I came to him and told him. He left me pregnant.
And later today,
you say he gave you the ring on May 8th. He says he gave it to you on April 1st. And you say that you hadn't seen the ring before.
Yes.
Baloney!
real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Christopher Safford says his daughter's maternal grandmother, Linda Daniels, owes for the return of child support.
Listen, your daughter created this problem.
Yes.
And I'm going to explain how your daughter created this problem. She was married to somebody else at the time she gave birth to this child.
True.
Which means, according to her, they must put his name on the birth certificate, that her husband. That's not always true. Doesn't have to put it down if she says he's not the father. He could be legally compelled to support the child until somebody else gets on the hook for support. However, she created this problem because she cannot, well, just pay attention. If this child went on welfare, welfare wouldn't know who to sue for the support. Do you sue the father who's on the birth certificate, or do you sue this man who hasn't been adjudicated the father? I mean, he's had the child now for a considerable period of time. The court would not have given him the child if he was unfit to have the child.
The court didn't give him the child at the time he took her.
We gave her.
Ma'am,
after that.
Ma'am, if I may?
No, you
Right.
don't have your
I need
attorneys
to
for
say
me.
something.
She talking to me now.
Go ahead.
Can I speak?
Go ahead.
This situation, this situation is my fault. But with my kids, the reason my kids are there with them, it's because I put them there. I've maintained a job and security, but I was not